My husband had me sign a homemaker agreement. For the sake of our family, I signed it without hesitation. 5 years later, he accused me of having no income for years of contributing nothing to the family and demanded that I leave with nothing. In court, with a single statement from me, the judge ruled in my favor. My husband and his family lost the case completely stunned. Sign it. From today on, you can be a full-time homemaker with peace of mind. Just take care of me and my parents. Jake pushed a printed agreement across the granite countertop, his tone as casual as if he were asking what I wanted on my pizza. I looked down at the document titled Homemaker and Family Responsibility Agreement. The stark black text on the bright white paper was sharp and clear, piercing my eyes. Clause 1, Party B, Emily Hayes voluntarily resigns from her job to take full responsibility for all household affairs, including but not limited to laundry, cooking, cleaning, and caring for the parents of both parties. Clause 2, Party A. Jake Miller will provide Party B a monthly household allowance of $2,500 for all joint living expenditures. Clause 7. If the marriage is dissolved due to Party B's failure to fulfill her family duties, Party B forfeits any claim to the division of the couple's joint assets. My hands were trembling slightly, not from anger but from a chilling coldness spreading through my chest. After 3 years of marriage, I never imagined my husband would turn our life together into a business contract. Jake, what is this? I tried to keep my voice steady. He adjusted his Warby Parker glasses, a birthday gift I'd bought him with my first real paycheck. His tone remained flat. Emily, don't overthink it. My mom's right. With what you're making now, there's not much left after our student loan payments and the mortgage. It's better for you to be home. We sign this, we both know our roles, and it prevents arguments down the road. Your mom's right, I laughed a hollow sound. The last flicker of hope in my heart died. From the day we got married, his mother had openly and subtly implied I wasn't good enough for her son. Jake was a Cornell-educated software engineer. I was a marketing coordinator with a degree from a state school. But when he proposed, he was the one who'd said, his eyes wet with tears, I'll spend my life making you happy. Just sign it. For us, Jake pressed the pen into my hand. My parents are getting older, they need more support. You're almost 30. It's time to start thinking about kids. I looked at him, the man I had loved for 5 years. His eyes held expectation and urgency, but not a shred of apology. My hand tightened around the pen. Fine. I'll sign. The words escaped my lips, startling even me. But a voice inside me scoffed, sign it, Emily. Let's see how long he can keep up this act. I lowered my head and under the Party B signature line wrote my name, Emily Hayes, one stroke at a time. I wrote with such force that the pen nearly tore the paper. Jake visibly relaxed, a smile spreading across his face. That's my girl. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. He happily folded the agreement as if it were a trophy. In that instant, I realized with stark clarity that from this day forward, my role in this house had changed from wife to employee. Over the next 5 years, I would replay this afternoon countless times in my mind. I would remember how naively I believed that compromise could earn respect, that sacrifice could earn gratitude. But for now, I just smiled at him. What do you feel like for dinner? I'll get started. Whatever you want, babe. Anything you make is amazing. Jake was in high spirits, and even leaned in to kiss me. I turned away, pretending to head to the kitchen. I'm going to cook. The moment I turned, the smile vanished from my face. The kitchen window reflected my image. 29 years old, no crow's feet yet, but something in their gaze had already died. I turned on the faucet. The water rushed out, just like the next 5 years of my life, flowing silently toward a predetermined end. But Jake didn't know that the moment I signed my name, I had used my phone to photograph every page of the agreement. And he certainly didn't know that, as I signed, I had used my fingernail to make a tiny, almost invisible mark below my name. A small, sharp triangle. Like a knife. What can 5 years change? It can turn a bright young engineer into a 6-figure project manager who constantly complains about being burned out. It can also turn a woman who once beamed at a simple bouquet of flowers into a housewife who spends 10 minutes comparing brands of canned tomatoes to save 50 cents. Mom, here's this month's budget spreadsheet, I said, placing the printout next to my mother-in-law. She was scrolling through Facebook on her iPad and didn't look up. Just leave it there. She carelessly tossed a used napkin onto the freshly polished coffee table. Oh, by the way, your father's old golf buddy is coming for dinner tomorrow. Make that nice pot roast. And a few sides. These are important people, don't make it look like we're cutting corners like last time. Last time, she gave me a few hours' notice that her book club was coming over. I hastily made lasagna and a large salad, and she still complained the garlic bread wasn't homemade. Okay, I will, I said calmly. 5 years was long enough to grind all grievances into habit. My mother-in-law finally looked up, eyeing me from head to toe. Look at you in those same yoga pants all day. Anyone who didn't know better would think we were struggling. Isn't the money Jake makes enough for you to buy a nice dress? I said nothing. The $2,500 household allowance had to cover the mortgage on our suburban home utilities. 2 car payments, groceries for a family of 5. His parents had moved into the in-law suite last year, and his parents' desunging, prescription copay. It had to keep Jake in the well-tailored shirts he needed to look the part at his tech firm. It was a feat of financial acrobatics just to break even each month. A nice dress. The All Saints dress in my online shopping cart, which I'd watched go from $299 to $199 on sale, was still something I couldn't bring myself to buy. Susan, if there's nothing else, I'm going to the grocery store. Wait, she stopped me pulling 3 $20 bills from her purse. Get the good cuts of meat. Don't be so cheap. You can keep the change. Her condescending tone was like a needle prick. I took the wrinkled bills, my fingertips cold. Outside, the early winter wind whipped at my face. The supermarket was always bustling and bright. I navigated the aisles, calculating every cent. The butcher recognized me. Emily, getting ground chuck again. The fillet is beautiful today. Treat that husband of yours. No thanks, Mark. Just the chuck as usual. Ground chuck was cheaper, but if you seasoned it right and didn't overcook it, the burgers were just as good. Jake had never noticed the difference. Or maybe he had and just never said anything. As I was walking back to the car, my phone rang. It was my college roommate Chloe, the only close friend I still kept in touch with. The 10-year reunion is next Saturday. You have to come. I haven't seen you in forever. My first instinct was to refuse. I don't know. I might have plans. What could be more important than seeing us? I heard Sarah. Chen is even flying in from Singapore. Just come. It'll be a girls' night. No husbands allowed. Chloe's voice was as vibrant as ever, like a ray of light unexpectedly shining into my gray, dusty life. I was silent for a few seconds, looking at a bruised apple at the top of my grocery bag. Okay, I'll go. After hanging up, a faint, long-lost ripple of excitement stirred in my heart, but it was quickly followed by a deeper emptiness. What would I even do there? Listen to them talk about their promotions, their trips to Europe, the private schools their kids were in. All I could talk about was the price of organic chicken and my strained relationship with my mother-in-law. When I got home, my father-in-law was watching Fox News with the volume blasting. My mother-in-law took a tour of the groceries and started her critique. The organic strawberries. They're a rip-off, Emily. And this cut of beef has so much fat. Honestly, you need to be a smarter shopper. I silently unpacked the groceries without a word. Arguing was pointless. She just needed someone to lecture. That evening, Jake came home looking drained. He dropped his laptop bag by the door. Dinner ready, I'm starving. Almost. Wash up and it'll be on the table. 4 dishes were on the table: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and a side salad. It was simple home cooking, but I had made it with care. Jake shoveled a forkful of mashed potatoes into his mouth and suddenly said, "By the way, I can't do dinner next Saturday. Big work thing." My heart tightened. Next Saturday? I was thinking of going to my college reunion. What reunion? Jake cut me off with a frown. My parents will be here. Who's going to make dinner? Besides, you don't have anything in common with those people anymore. What's the point? My mother-in-law immediately chimed in. Exactly. Those reunions are just people trying to show off or hook up. You're a married woman. Your focus should be here at home. My father-in-law even tore his eyes away from the TV. A wife's place is in the home. My hand holding my fork froze midair. I looked at the 3 of them, Jake annoyed. My mother-in-law looking self-righteous. My father-in-law indifferent. It was as if I had made the most outrageous request. I already told Chloe I'd go, I said, my voice soft but firm. It's the first time I've gone out with my friends in 5 years. Jake slammed his fork down. Emily, what is your problem? Are you unhappy here? Have I not provided for you? As someone with no income who depends entirely on me, what right do you have to make demands? His words were like a bucket of ice water poured over my head. No income. Entirely dependent on him. He had said these words before, but always with a hint of a joke or affection. Today they were a naked, cold statement of fact. I looked up at him, the man I had shared a bed with for 8 years. His face showed impatience and the anger of being contradicted, but no awareness of how hurtful his words were. 5 years. I woke up at 6 a.m. every day to make his coffee and was the last to go to bed at night. 5 years. I managed his parents' appointments and medications more diligently than I managed my own. 5 years. This home was immaculate, his shirts were always perfectly ironed, and a home-cooked meal always awaited him. In his eyes, all of this amounted to no income, no contribution. Something in my chest turned completely cold and hard. Suddenly I smiled, a very calm smile. Okay, I won't go. Jake's expression softened, his tone gentler. That's my girl. I'm just looking out for you. Those events, they're not for you anymore. Looking out for me. Those familiar words. I lowered my head and continued to eat quietly. The meatloaf was my best recipe, but I couldn't taste a thing. That night, after Jake finished his shower and got into bed, he habitually reached out to hold me. My body stiffened slightly. I'm tired. Let's just sleep, I said, my back to him. He muttered something about me being difficult and rolled over. Soon, his snores filled the room. I lay with my eyes open, staring at the sliver of light from the streetlight peeking through the curtains. It was faint, but persistent. Under my pillow, my phone screen silently lit up. It was a message from Chloe. It's a date. Sending the address now. You have to be there. We have so much to catch up on. I didn't reply. A long time passed before I whispered to myself in the darkness, a voice so quiet it was almost inaudible. Emily, you're pathetic. I wasn't cursing myself for the 5 years of tireless work. I was cursing myself because even now a pathetic sliver of expectation for the man who made me sign that agreement remained in my heart. The expectation that he would see my efforts. The expectation that he would say, "You've worked hard." The expectation that he would remember I had clipped my own wings for the sake of this family. Tears finally slid down my face hot, then quickly turning cold on the pillowcase. I wiped them away gently and took out my phone. I opened the encrypted photo album. There was only one file inside, photos of the Homemaker and Family Responsibility Agreement. I scrolled through them page by page. My gaze finally rested on the signature for Party B. The tiny triangle I had carved with my fingernail was almost invisible in the screen's faint glow. But I knew it was there. Like a seed buried for 5 years. Or a knife hidden for 5 years. I didn't go to the reunion. Chloe bombarded me with texts, finally sending one that read, "Is something wrong? Seriously, don't bottle it up. Talk to me." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen for a long time. In the end, I just replied, "It's nothing really." Something came up with Jake's parents. "You guys have an amazing time." Then I silenced my phone and buried it in the back of my nightstand drawer. On Saturday night, Jake was as expected at a work dinner and didn't come home until late. His mother was watching a crime drama in the living room and his father was already asleep. After cleaning the kitchen, I went back to our bedroom and locked the door. The key to the bottom drawer of my desk was hidden in the inner pocket of an old winter coat in the closet. I unlocked it. There was nothing valuable inside, just a few old journals, some college memorabilia, and a tin box. I opened the box. On top was a photograph. It was our college graduation. Dressed in caps and gowns, Jake and I stood in front of the clock tower. His arm was around my shoulder, his smile bright and full of promise. I leaned against him, my eyes shining. That was the Jake who pursued me, who wrote me poems, who drove 2 hours just to bring me my favorite ice cream, who waited for me in a downpour after my evening class, his own jacket draped over my shoulders. He said, "Emily, I'll be good to you for the rest of my life." I believed him. So when his mother made comments about my family's middle-class background, I tolerated it. When he asked me to take a lower-paying job closer to his new office, I did it. And when he presented me with that agreement, I signed it. I flipped the photo over. On the back, Jake had written a line, the ink now faded, "To my amazing Emily. My future is all you." How ironic. My future. My future was this endless cycle of the kitchen sink and the laundry room day after day for 5 years. I carefully placed the photo back and took out the items underneath an old flash drive containing articles and marketing proposals I wrote in college. I was once known for my creativity in my department. My professor said I had a real flair, several professional certifications and awards their corners now worn, and a thick binder. It wasn't filled with recipes, but with articles I had printed from Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and Ad Age case studies industry trends. In the first couple of years of our marriage, I still maintained the habit of reading and learning, thinking that maybe I could return to the workforce after our children were older. Then there was no later. I caressed the smooth cover of the binder, the dull ache in my heart, slowly turning into a cold clarity. I turned my phone back on. Dozens of unread messages. The college friends group chat was buzzing with photos from the reunion. Smiling faces, stylish dresses, perfect makeup. Chloe had tagged me several times, asking where I was. Scrolling down, I saw a group photo of Chloe, Sarah, and two other roommates. The background was a chic downtown restaurant. They were raising their glasses, smiling like flowers in bloom. Sarah had changed a lot. She wore a sharp blazer, looking confident and sophisticated. Below the photo, Sarah had sent a separate message to me. Emily, Chloe said you couldn't make it at the last minute. Such a shame. We have to get together next time. By the way, I'm back in the States for good doing management consulting. If you ever need help with anything, just ask. Seriously. I stared at her message and something in a corner of my heart stirred. Management consulting. I remembered Sarah was passionate about that in college. She even dragged me along to a few business school seminars. On an impulse, I replied, Sarah, what kind of consulting are you focused on now? As soon as I sent it, I felt it was abrupt. We hadn't spoken in 5 years, and the first thing I do is ask about her work. To my surprise, Sarah replied almost instantly. Oh my God, Emily, you're alive. I'm mainly doing organizational efficiency and process optimization with some HR and risk management stuff. Why are you interested? I hesitated for a few seconds, then typed, just curious. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. Don't say that. You were the real brains of our sweet Miss Starwriter. If you were in the corporate world, you'd be running circles around me by now. She added a winking emoji. Brains. That distant nickname made my nose tingle. I've been out of the game for a long time. You can always get back in, Sarah sent back. Em, are you okay? You don't sound like yourself. If there's anything I can do for real, you have to tell me. I looked at the words on the screen, my fingertips cold. What could I say that I signed my life away, that my husband thinks I'm a freeloader, that my mother-in-law treats me like the hired help and still finds me lacking? In the end, I only replied, I'm fine, really. You must be busy, I won't keep you. Putting down the phone, I sat at my desk looking out at the pitch-black night. From the living room, I could hear my mother-in-law turn up the TV volume. It was a true crime show, a woman recounting her husband's deceptions. Suddenly, I remembered something. About 3 months ago, while Jake was in the shower, his phone buzzed incessantly on the coffee table. His mother told me to see who it was. When I picked it up, the screen showed a text from Ashley, marketing. I didn't open it, but the preview banner popped up, Jake, just following up. Mr. Henderson is asking again about that gift card you promised him for the message was cut off as the screen went dark. I stood there frozen, the blood in my veins seemingly turning to slush. Jake came out of the bathroom and frowned when he saw me with his phone. What are you doing with my phone? He glanced at the screen, his expression a little unnatural before it darkened. Ugh, people at work. Can't handle the simplest things, he muttered. Ashley, marketing, gift card, promised. Those words became a thorn in my heart. But I didn't ask. 5 years as a housewife had worn down not only my sharp edges but also my courage to question. I told myself it was probably a misunderstanding, something work-related. But was it really a misunderstanding? Over the past 3 months, Jake's overtime and client dinners had become more frequent. He came home later and later. Sometimes he had the faint scent of an unfamiliar perfume on him, something floral and expensive. When I asked, he would get impatient. Do you have any idea how much pressure I'm under? Can you just stop being so paranoid? For once I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and slowly exhaled. I couldn't go on like this. Not to catch him cheating, my love for him had already withered, but for myself. I reopened the tin box and took out the old flash drive, plugging it into my laptop. Dust motes danced in the lamplight. After the computer booted up, I clicked on a folder named College Portfolio. Inside were all the campaigns and proposals I had written, along with a few data analysis projects I had created myself. The software might be outdated, but the logic and framework were still there. I opened a web browser and clumsily typed in a few keywords: homemaker rights value of domestic labor, division of marital assets, postnuptial agreement validity. A sea of information appeared. I read through it all line by line, struggling to understand. Legal statutes, landmark cases, it was overwhelming. My heart sank, but it was also slowly filled with a kind of cold determination. I knew that Homemaker agreement was unfair, but I hadn't realized that in the eyes of the law, it might be nothing more than a worthless piece of paper. Some of its clauses might even render it invalid from the start due to their illegality. As for the accusation of no contribution to the family, it was completely baseless in legal terms. Housework, raising children, and caring for the elderly are all recognized by law as contributions to the family. But I also knew that the law was the last line of defense and the most complex battlefield. I needed to prepare. I needed evidence. I needed help. I glanced at the old phone in the drawer. It was the one I used before getting married. The service had been disconnected long ago, but maybe it could still turn on. Once the idea took root, I couldn't suppress it. I got up, walked to the door, and listened carefully. The TV was still on. My mother-in-law was likely still watching. I quietly locked the bedroom door, then returned to the desk. From the depths of the closet, I found an old charger and plugged the phone in. The 15 seconds it took to boot up felt like an eternity. The screen lit up icons slowly loading. I opened the photo album, my fingers trembling slightly from nerves. I swiped quickly past countless old selfies, landscapes, and food pictures, finally stopping at 5 years ago. There on the screen were the photos of the Homemaker and Family Responsibility Agreement. Every page, every clause, and the signatures of both Jake and me were captured clearly. I checked each one, ensuring the key clauses were legible, especially Clause 7. If the marriage is dissolved due to Party B's failure to fulfill her family duties, Party B forfeits any claim to the division of the couple's joint assets. The small print was crystal clear. I exited the album and opened the voice recorder app. It was empty, but I remembered this phone had a feature to quickly start recording from the lock screen. It took me a while to refamiliarize myself with the operation. After I was done, I carefully powered off the old phone, unplugged it, wrapped it in a soft cloth, and hid it again in another secret pocket of the winter coat in the closet. Then I sat down at the computer and opened a new encrypted document. On the first line, I typed a few words: domestic labor log and supplemental household ledger. Yes, I had the budget spreadsheet I gave my mother-in-law for review each month, but that was the official version. This electronic document starting now would be the real detailed record. From tomorrow on, no, from the day I signed that agreement 5 years ago, I would recall, document, and quantify as much as I could of all the time, energy, and effort I had poured into this family. Every invisible act of labor. This wasn't to evoke pity. It was so that if the day came when I needed it, I would make everyone, especially a judge, see exactly what I, Emily Hayes, had contributed to this family over the past 5 years. The night outside was as thick as ink, but for the first time in 5 years, my eyes reflected the cold, determined light of the screen. I started keeping a new kind of ledger. Not the kind that records milk $4, bread $3. It was a different kind of accounting, one that recorded time, labor, and all the contributions that were taken for granted. 5:40 a.m. I woke up before the alarm. A biological clock cultivated over 5 years. Jake's snores were beside me. I tiptoed out of bed, turned off the alarm, and went to the kitchen. Start the coffee maker, make pancakes. His mother likes buttermilk, his father needs sugar-free syrup, and Jake likes them with chocolate chips. Scramble eggs, he likes his soft scrambled, she wants hers well done. Squeeze fresh orange juice. 6:30 a.m. Breakfast is on the table, just the right temperature. I wake up his parents and Jake. 6:50 a.m. Jake scrolls through his phone, frowning, probably dealing with work emails. My mother-in-law pokes her scrambled eggs with a fork. A bit dry today. I say nothing, swap her plate with mine, and go back to make her a new batch. 7:20 a.m. Jake finishes, pushes his plate aside. I'm leaving. His briefcase and blazer, which I steamed last night, are by the door. He puts on his shoes and leaves without a backward glance. 7:30 a.m. His parents finish eating. His father goes to his room to watch the news. His mother sits on the sofa to begin her day of supervision. The floor's a bit dusty, vacuum it again later. The roses on the patio need fertilizing, they're wilting. That cashmere sweater needs to be hand-washed, don't put it in the machine. I acknowledge each command and begin clearing the table. Greasy plates, bowls with dried egg, they all need to be carefully washed, sanitized, and put away. Wipe the table, the stove, clean the sink. 8:00 a.m. dishes done. I take out my new household log hidden in the bedroom and write breakfast preparation and cleanup 1.5 hours. Includes menu planning, handling special dietary needs, and post-meal kitchen sanitization. Then I start vacuuming. The house is 2,500 square feet. Not cluttered, but I have to move furniture to carefully clean every corner. As I vacuum the living room, my mother-in-law lifts her feet for a second, then puts them back down on the freshly vacuumed rug. She's engrossed in her TV show and doesn't look at me. I silently run the vacuum over that spot again. 9:30 a.m. vacuuming finished. I sort the family's dirty laundry, whites, darks, delicates. Jake's dress shirts need to be pre-treated at the collars and cuffs. His mother's silk blouses require special detergent and gentle washing in cold water. While the washing machine runs, I tend to the patio garden and clean the outdoor furniture. The early winter wind is cold. 11:00 a.m. Laundry is washed and in the dryer. I start preparing lunch. His parents are older, so their food needs to be soft and easy to digest. But his mother complains if it's bland, so I have to put extra thought into it: a chicken and vegetable soup, a tuna salad on soft bread, a fruit salad. I set aside a portion of leftover spicy chili for Jake, his favorite, in case he comes home for lunch. 12:00 p.m. Lunch is ready. His parents come to the table. His father takes 2 bites and says the soup is bland. His mother retorts, "Too much salt is bad for you, don't you know you have high blood pressure?" They start bickering. I eat silently, tasting nothing. 1:00 p.m. Lunch is over. I clear the table, wash the dishes, and cover the portion for Jake with plastic wrap before putting it in the fridge. 1:00 p.m. A half-hour break. I go back to the bedroom, lock the door, and take out my logbook. I continue writing. Morning chores, 3.5 hours. Includes full house vacuuming, 2500 SQFT. Laundry sorting, washing and drying approx. 15 pounds, including special care items. Patio cleaning and gardening. Lunch preparation considering different age and health needs. Post-meal cleanup. My fingers ache a little. I hadn't realized how much I could do in just half a day. The afternoon is usually for grocery shopping or other errands. Today I need to go to Costco. Pushing a giant cart through the aisles, my mind automatically inventories the supplies at home. Paper towels are running low, time to buy more. His mother's calcium supplements are almost gone. Replacement heads for Jake's electric razor. I pause at the snack aisle. A brand of imported cheese that Jake loves. I used to grab a wedge without thinking. Today I look at the price, $25, and push my cart away. Passing the pharmacy section, I see my usual brand of tampons is on sale and grab a box. I notice a new organic brand elegantly packaged. I pick it up, look at it, and put it back. It's a few dollars more expensive. Unnecessary. At checkout, I'm left with a cart full of heavy items. I load them into the car by myself, the plastic packaging digging painfully into my fingers. In the parking lot, I run into a neighbor. Emily, stocking up all by yourself again. "You're a superwoman," she says with a smile. Just the usual, Carol. I force a smile. "Jake is so lucky to have you." I wish my son's wife was half as dedicated. I barely hear the rest of what she says. Dedicated superwoman. I've been hearing these words for 5 years. I used to take them as compliments. Now they feel like heavy labels stuck to my skin. Back home, I put everything away, check the receipt, and log the expenses. By the time I'm done, it's almost 4 p.m. Time to start preparing dinner. Dinner needs to be more formal. At least 3 courses. 5:30 p.m. A text from Jake, late meeting. Won't make it for dinner. Terse, no extra words. I stare at the text for a few seconds, then take the salmon I was about to bake his favorite out of the pan, wrap half of it, and put it in the fridge. I continue cooking. 6:00 p.m. dinner with his parents. The table is quiet except for the sound of the TV and the light clinking of utensils. "Jake is working late again," his mother says. "Men have it tough working hard out there. You should be more supportive." Supportive. I've always been supportive. After dinner, I clean up. By the time I've helped his parents with their evening medications, it's almost 8 p.m. I return to my bedroom, lock the door, and take out my logbook. Under the dim light of my desk lamp, I continue afternoon and evening 4 hours. Includes bulk grocery procurement and transport of heavy items, organization of supplies, and expense reconciliation. Dinner preparation adjusted due to Jay's absence. Post-meal cleanup. Assisting in-laws with evening routine. Finished. I look at the densely packed pages. This was just an ordinary day. No children, his mother had been nagging for years, but I had been secretly taking precautions. No emergencies. No visiting relatives. And it was still like this. What about the busier days? When his parents were sick and needed care at the hospital? When relatives and friends visited for the holidays and needed to be hosted? The deep cleaning before parties? The seasonal changing and storing of clothes? Contacting and coordinating repairs for the broken dishwasher? All that trivial, time-consuming, mentally draining yet invisible labor. How was that supposed to be calculated? I open my computer and click on the encrypted document, typing in the day's entries from my notebook. It's not just about time anymore. I'm starting to assign value to them. I search for the market rates for domestic services in my area. Routine cleaning is $25, 40 per hour. A personal chef for a family meal is $100, 200 per meal. Care for a semi-independent elderly person is $3,000, 5000 per month. I take the calendar off the wall and flip back to that month 5 years ago. Starting from the day I signed the agreement, I begin to trace back day by day. Memories flood in vivid with details. The month his mother was recovering from knee surgery, I ran between physical therapy appointments and home sleeping less than 4 hours a day. His father's heart condition meant I often had to get up at night to check on him, and I haven't had a deep sleep since. Before Jake's important presentations, I would press his suit, prepare his coffee just right, and proofread his slides late into the night. The backyard landscaping project, from design to sourcing plants to supervising the workers. I did it all by myself, running myself ragged. Jake was only responsible for signing the check. In his eyes, all of this was probably nothing. After all, it didn't directly generate economic benefits. The sound of my typing is sharp and lonely in the quiet room. I rub my tired eyes and look out the window. The city's lights glitter, illuminating the prosperity of others. Suddenly, my phone buzzes. It's Sarah. Emily, you up? That online seminar on management consulting, I mentioned I saved you a spot. It's free. The speaker is a big deal. It's this Wednesday night. Are you free to listen in just to learn something new? I stare at the message for a long time. Wednesday night. Jake will most likely be working late. His mother will be watching her non-negotiable reality TV. I reply, okay, send me the link. Thanks. After sending the message, I feel a strange sensation. Like a room that's been sealed shut for a long time has suddenly had a crack opened, letting in a sliver of fresh air. I know that just documenting and just learning are far from enough, but it's a start. I close my logbook, shut down the computer, and walk to the full-length mirror. The woman in the mirror is 34. There are fine lines at the corners of her eyes. Her complexion is a tired yellow. She's wearing faded loungewear, her hair tied back casually, a few loose strands framing her face. I look into her eyes, which were once bright and sparkling. Now they are a bit dull, a bit weary. But deep inside, something seems to be faintly, stubbornly starting to glow again. Emily, I say silently to my reflection, calculate everything carefully. Calculate how much you've given over these 5 years. Calculate what this family owes you. And calculate which path you need to take from here. The night is still long, but I know that from this day forward I am no longer the Emily who only knows how to work with her head down and silently endure. I am my own person, an Emily who is starting to learn how to calculate her own gains and losses and to plan for her own future. The online seminar was scheduled for 8 p.m. on Wednesday. At 7:30, I finished cleaning the kitchen and said to my mother-in-law Susan, I have a bit of a migraine coming on. I'm going to lie down early. She was engrossed in the Real Housewives and didn't even look up. Fine, go ahead. There's water in the fridge if you need it. Okay, I replied and hurried back to the bedroom, locking the door. My heart was thumping gently, a long-forgotten thrill of doing something illicit. I opened my laptop, put on my headphones, and clicked the link Sarah had sent. It opened a professional Zoom webinar. I had registered with a pseudonym and a temporary email address. At 8 p.m. sharp, the seminar began. The speaker was a sharp, middle-aged woman who spoke quickly and with clear logic. She talked about optimizing business workflows, identifying redundancies, and increasing efficiency. I struggled to keep up. Many of the business terms were unfamiliar, but the core ideas struck me like a beam of light. Any step that does not produce direct ROI is a cost. Quantification is the first step of management. What you can't measure, you can't improve. Beware of inefficiency and waste hidden by routine, including human capital, time, and opportunity costs. I furiously took notes on my laptop. Suddenly, my ideas about quantifying the value of my housework had a solid theoretical framework. Opportunity cost. If I hadn't quit my job back then, where would I be now? The thought was a sharp needle prick to my heart. Halfway through the seminar, I heard footsteps outside, followed by Jake's voice. My body tensed. I immediately lowered the volume on my laptop and held my breath. Why are you back so early today? His mother asked. The project review ended early, so I came back to rest. Jake sounded tired, but in a good mood. Where's Emily? She said she had a migraine and went to bed. The footsteps approached my door and stopped. I could almost hear my own heartbeat. He knocked. Emily, I took a deep breath, trying to make my voice sound weak. My head hurts. I'm already asleep. There was a moment of silence from the other side. All right then. You rest. I'm going to take a shower. The footsteps faded away. I let out a sigh of relief, realizing my palms were sweaty. The seminar was wrapping up. I kept my microphone muted and listened quietly. At 9:30 it ended. I took off my headphones. The room was silent, save for the faint whir of the computer fan. My mind was buzzing, but a strange sense of excitement coursed through my veins, as if a long-shut window had been pushed open, letting in a gust of fresh, unfamiliar air. I was organizing my notes, connecting keywords like workflow quantification, cost, and value to my household ledger, when I faintly heard Jake's voice from the living room, low and cheerful. He was on the phone. Just got home. I miss you. I'll check my calendar for next week, should be fine. That purse isn't available in the States. Okay, I'll find a friend to bring it from Europe. The words were intermittent, but I caught the key phrases. Next week. Purse. I miss you. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I sat motionless in my chair. The small spark of excitement from learning something new was extinguished by this sudden, chilling discovery. It wasn't that I hadn't suspected, but hearing it with my own ears was different. It felt like a punch to the gut, a dull, sickening pain. I closed my eyes, my fingers gripping the edge of the desk so tightly they dug into the wood, the slight pain keeping me grounded. Don't panic, Emily. This is not the time to panic. I got up quietly and pressed my ear to the door. The call seemed to be over. I heard Jake walking around and his mother's hushed question, "Who were you on the phone with? You sound so happy." A client. An important project. Jake's tone was normal. A client. An important project. A miss you client. I sneered inwardly. After 5 years of marriage, I knew his tells when he was lying. That slight, deliberate casualness. Others might not notice, but I could. I returned to my computer and opened a new blank document. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then typed out a title, Record of Suspicious Incidents. Date. Time. Content of what I heard. I tried to describe the scene as objectively as possible without adding my own judgment. But as I typed, "I miss you" in purse, my fingertips couldn't help but turn cold. I encrypted and saved the file. This was just a fragment. I needed more. A plan dangerous but necessary began to form in my cold heart. The next day after Jake left, I started cleaning his home office. This was his territory. He had explicitly told me not to touch his things. Usually I just did a quick dusting. But today I was unusually thorough. Most of his desk drawers were locked, but one containing miscellaneous items was not. I carefully opened it. Inside were old files, broken USB drives, and expired business cards. I quickly but carefully sifted through them. Under a stack of old receipts, I felt something hard. It was a small, velvet-covered box, light. My heart skipped a beat. I opened it. It was empty, but the lining was stamped with the logo of a luxury brand known for jewelry and watches, but which also sold expensive leather goods. An empty gift box. Why would he keep it? I took out my old phone, silenced it, and quickly took photos of the box and the logo. Then I put it back exactly as I had found it. Next, while cleaning the wastebasket next to his desk, a permitted task, I slowed down. Most of it was discarded drafts and failed printouts. But under a few crumpled paper balls, I found a wadded-up cocktail napkin. It was thicker than a normal napkin. I paused. Wearing my cleaning gloves, I gently unfurled it slightly. A corner of the napkin was printed with the logo of a high-end hotel downtown. More importantly, there was a faint, rosy lipstick stain on it, along with a line of small, slightly smudged text written in what looked like black eyeliner, Wednesday 8 p.m. The usual spot. Miss you. The handwriting was feminine and ornate. Wednesday night. That was last night. The night he was working late. Controlling my breathing, I took another photo with my old phone, then carefully crumpled the napkin back up and placed it under the other paper balls. My hands were steady, but my back was drenched in a cold sweat. After I finished, I left the office, closing the door behind me. My steps were normal as I carried the trash outside. Over the next few days, I became quieter and more obedient. I fulfilled every one of my mother-in-law's requests immediately. When Jake occasionally came home for dinner, I cooked all his favorite dishes. Sometimes he would glance at me, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes as if trying to read my face. But I would just calmly serve him soup and ask if he wanted more rice. I was still the same, docile, unremarkable Emily. Only in the dead of night, the entries in my encrypted file grew longer. Not just the quantification of my household labor, but also the clues. a receipt from a high-end steakhouse found in the inner pocket of Jake's suit. The date was last Wednesday. The bill was for two, but the expense was filed under a corporate name I didn't recognize. A long reddish-brown hair, not mine. I have dark brown hair found under the front passenger seat of his car. The collar of one of his shirts, smelling of a sweet, unfamiliar perfume different from any I used. He had started changing his phone password frequently, and always took his phone into the bathroom with him when he showered. Each entry was accompanied by the time, place, a brief description, and whenever possible, clear photos or physical evidence. That single hair, for example, I carefully taped to a white piece of paper and labeled with the date. Individually, any of these could be explained away as a misunderstanding or a coincidence. But pieced together, the picture was becoming terrifyingly clear. Like the most patient hunter, the most dispassionate detective, I collected the evidence of my rotting marriage. My heart ached, but the pain was increasingly mixed with a cold numbness which eventually settled into a cruel clarity. On Friday night, for a change, Jake didn't have a work dinner. At the table, he suddenly said, "Oh, right. I have a short business trip next Wednesday to Atlanta. I'll be back the same day." My hand holding a piece of vegetable paused. "Another business trip. You've been so busy lately," his mother asked. "I have to meet an important client." "Can't be postponed," Jake said, glancing at me. "Emily, don't wait up for me for dinner that day." "Okay," I nodded, my voice calm and steady. "Be safe on your trip. A same-day business trip." The usual spot. "Miss you." I lowered my eyes, staring at the white, glistening grains of rice in my bowl. That night, after Jake fell asleep, I took out my old phone again. This time, I didn't take pictures. I opened the voice recorder and tested it. Then, I opened Amazon on my laptop, created a new account with a new email address, and searched for a few keywords: mini recording device, portable, high sensitivity, long battery life. Many products popped up. I carefully compared the specs and reviews, finally choosing one disguised as a power bank. It had a long battery life, was easy to operate, and most importantly, had a voice-activated mode. It would automatically start recording when it detected sound and stop after a period of silence. I placed the order, paid, and set the delivery address to an Amazon locker at a nearby Whole Foods, using a completely unrelated alias for the recipient. After I was done, I deleted all browsing and purchase history, logged out, and closed the laptop. The moonlight outside was cold. I lay back in bed, Jake's steady breathing beside me. Less than a foot separated us, but it felt like a deep, bottomless chasm. I knew what I was doing. I was gathering evidence, preparing for a war that might be coming. A war that might be to save our marriage, but more likely to leave it. And the opening act of this war might just begin next Wednesday when he went to his usual spot for his rendezvous. I stared at the ceiling, my heart quiet. So quiet I could hear the blood flowing through my veins, cold and slow. "Don't be afraid, Emily," I told myself. "You are just taking back what you should have seen clearly long ago." The package arrived on Monday afternoon. I didn't dare have it delivered to the house. Instead, during my grocery run, I made a detour to Whole Foods. My heart pounded as I scanned the code at the Amazon locker, but I forced my face to remain calm. The box was small inside a standard Amazon bubble mailer. I tucked it into the very bottom of my reusable grocery bag, covering it with kale and potatoes. Back home, my mother-in-law was napping. I put the groceries in the kitchen, then, clutching the inconspicuous mailer, hurried to my bedroom and locked the door. Inside the package was a plain-looking white power bank. According to the manual, I pressed a small hidden button on the side for 3 seconds. A tiny blue light flickered, indicating it was in standby mode. Another press, and the blue light stayed on. It was recording. The sound was clear. I whispered from the other side of the room, and the playback was perfectly audible. I plugged it in to charge. The wait was agonizing. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the ticking of the clock in the living room, my palms damp. That evening, while Jake was in the shower, I quickly checked the suit and briefcase he would be using the next day. The suit pockets were empty. In his briefcase, besides files and his laptop, was a small dark blue velvet jewelry box. It had no logo. I gently pried it open a crack. Inside was a delicate rose gold necklace with a tiny heart-shaped pendant that glinted in the light. I quickly closed it and put it back. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was expensive, definitely not a gift for a client or a casual friend. The next day, Wednesday, Jake got up later than usual, seeming distracted. At breakfast, he said, "I'll head back directly after meeting the client tonight, so it might be late." "Don't wait up." "Okay," I said, serving him oatmeal, my tone normal. "Drive safe." He glanced at me as if trying to read something on my face, but I just kept my head down, sipping my own coffee. He said nothing more, quickly ate and left. I stood at the window watching his car drive out of the complex and merge into the morning traffic. That black Audi, we bought it in our 3rd year of marriage. He had said it was for when we had a family. We never had a family and he drove it most of the time. Taking a deep breath, I went back to the bedroom and took out the fully charged power bank. I put it in my old canvas tote bag, along with my wallet and keys. It looked completely normal. All day I went about my chores as usual, but I was clumsy. I knocked over a bucket of water while mopping and almost salted a dish twice. My mother-in-law grumbled a few times and I just mumbled in agreement, my mind elsewhere. At 4 p.m., I told her, "Susan, I'm going to the store to get some things for dinner." "Be back early," she waved her eyes, glued to the TV. I walked out the afternoon sun a bit glaring. I didn't go to our usual supermarket. Instead, I took a bus in the opposite direction, getting off in a bustling commercial district. I went into a large department store and spent a long time in the restroom. When I came out, I was wearing a dark gray hoodie. I rarely wore a mask and a plain baseball cap. My canvas tote had been replaced with a black backpack. The power bank was in a side pocket. Head down, I melted into the crowd. I wandered aimlessly through a few clothing stores, then went into a coffee shop and sat at a corner table by the window. I ordered the cheapest iced tea and kept my eyes fixed on the street outside. Diagonally across from me was the hotel, the one from the napkin. Time ticked by. 5 p.m. 6 p.m. The city lights came on, the street filled with traffic. I clutched my glass, my fingertips icy. A voice in my head mocked me. "Emily, you're like a pathetic stalker." Another voice retorted coldly, "You're just confirming the facts." At 7:30 p.m., the familiar black Audi pulled into the hotel parking lot. My body went rigid. Jake got out of the driver's seat. He was wearing the custom suit I had just sent to the dry cleaners last month. His hair was styled and he was carrying his briefcase. He locked the car but didn't go in immediately, standing by the entrance as if waiting for someone checking his watch. A few minutes later, an Uber pulled up. A tall, slender young woman in a beige trench coat got out. Her hair was long and reddish-brown, conspicuous under the hotel lights. She walked toward Jake with a smile, her posture intimate. He went to meet her naturally, taking a small paper bag from her hand while his other hand briefly rested on the small of her back. They exchanged a few quiet words, then walked side by side through the revolving doors. My eyes followed them until they disappeared into the lobby. The entire scene lasted less than 2 minutes, but it felt like I had watched a long, silent film. My hands and feet were ice cold, my blood frozen. Reddish-brown hair, beige trench coat. Intimate gestures, the lipstick stain on the napkin, the hair under the car seat, the unfamiliar perfume. All the fragments pieced themselves together at this moment, revealing the hideous whole. I sat there motionless. The cafe's background music, the chatter of other patrons, it all sounded muffled as if through a thick wall of glass. The only thing I could hear was the throbbing of my own heart in my ears, heavy and hollow. After what felt like an eternity, I gasped for air. The cold air filled my lungs, bringing a sharp pain. I took out my phone and checked the time, 7:45 p.m. I should go. There was no point in staying. But I didn't move. The black backpack sat on the chair next to me. In its side pocket, the power bank's indicator light was faintly glowing blue. I had secretly pressed the record button the moment Jake's car appeared. After another 10 minutes, I forced myself to stand. My legs were weak. I put on my backpack and walked out of the cafe. The evening wind hit my face, making me shiver. I didn't go home. I didn't know how I could, how to face my mother-in-law's potential questions, how to continue playing the part of the virtuous daughter-in-law in a house reeking of betrayal. I wandered aimlessly down the street. The bright lights of the shop windows reflected my blurry figure, a ghost shrouded in a large hoodie and cap. Couples walked by, arm in arm, laughing. Delivery drivers zipped past. The world was bustling and alive, a stark contrast to my own dead silence. I found a bench in a small park and sat down on the cold concrete. I finally took out the power bank, pressed and held the button. The blue light went out. Recording stopped. I put in my earphones and hit play. After a bit of static, I could hear the faint background noise of the cafe, followed by a long silence. Just as I thought I hadn't captured anything, a voice came through. It was Jake, cheerful, much gentler than when he spoke to me. "Been waiting long. Was the traffic bad?" A clear, unfamiliar female voice tinged with a playful whine. "You're asking now. I left work early and got my hair done just to see you. Do you like it? I do. You look beautiful no matter what." Jake's voice. Such a sweet talker. Where's my present? The bag you promised me. So impatient. Let's go inside first. We can talk while we eat. I ordered from that Japanese place you love and had it sent to the room. The room, oh, Mr. Miller is quite thoughtful today. Their soft laughter, the sound of their footsteps, the faint whir of the revolving door, and then the recording faded back into muffled background noise until I stopped it. The audio was crystal clear. Every word, every inflection. I sat on the bench, listening to it over and over. At first I was numb. Then a sharp, cold pain started in my chest and spread through my limbs. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was something deeper, more hopeless, like being sawed with a dull knife over and over. So he could be this gentle. So he could remember what someone else liked to eat. So he could plan thoughtful gifts and surprises. It wasn't that he didn't know how. It was just that none of that kindness was ever meant for me. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of selfless devotion. What did I get in return? An agreement that treated me like a maid, an accusation of having no income, no contribution, and now this blatant betrayal. The flirtatious voices continued in my ears, and I suddenly felt an urge to retch. I bent over, but nothing came up. Tears streamed down my face without warning, big fat drops hitting the cold concrete. I don't know how long I cried. When the tears finally ran dry, leaving only a burning sting, I took off my earphones, clutching the power bank tightly in my hand. Its cold metal casing dug into my palm, the pain keeping me lucid. I wiped my tears and stood up. My legs were still a bit shaky, but my spine straightened inch by inch. I looked back in the direction of the brightly lit hotel one last time, then turned and walked toward the bus stop. On the way home, I sent a message to Sarah. Sarah, those materials on management consulting. You mentioned, could you send me some more if it's convenient? And also, if you have any reliable introductory resources on marriage law, property rights, and labor rights, could you recommend? Some thanks. A reply came quickly. No problem, I'll email you a package. As for the legal stuff, I have a very professional lawyer friend. She's a woman who specializes in marital and labor disputes. She's great. If you want, I can send you links to her articles and public lectures first. M. Are you in some kind of trouble? You can talk to me anytime. I looked at the words on the screen, my eyes welling up again, but I held it in. I'm fine. Just want to learn more. Thank you, Sarah. Are you sure? No, I'm not fine. I'm in deep trouble. But I was no longer the Emily, who could only hide in a corner and cry. I had the evidence now. It wasn't enough, but at least it was more than just suspicion. I needed more. I needed to understand the rules. I needed to know my rights. I needed to plan my escape. The bus swayed along its route, the city lights a blur of color outside the window. I leaned my head against the cold glass, looking at my reflection. My eyes were still red and swollen, but my gaze was no longer lost. Don't cry, Emily, I told myself, my inner voice as hard as iron. Tears won't save you. The only thing that can save you is yourself and the knives they so willingly handed you. The recording felt like a searing brand on my heart, but the next day, the sun rose as usual, and I had to continue playing my part. Jake came home around 1 a.m. smelling of alcohol and that same faint, sweet perfume. He tiptoed to the bathroom, then got into bed and was soon snoring. I lay awake all night. In the morning, I got up at the usual time to make breakfast. I placed a fried egg and a glass of milk in front of him, my voice flat. Eat while it's hot. He rubbed his temples and glanced at me, a flicker of guilt in his eyes that was quickly masked by his usual indifference. He grunted, looking down at his phone. We were like two masterful actors performing a sham of domestic harmony on the stage of our home with only each other as the audience. And we both knew the play was nearing its end. I began to study more systematically. The resource package Sarah sent was comprehensive, covering everything from business management to basic legal knowledge and cases on women's rights. I utilized every spare moment. I listened to legal lectures on my Bluetooth headphones while cooking. I mentally reviewed cases while cleaning. In the brief moments while the washing machine ran, I read a few pages of an ebook. Knowledge dripped drop by drop into the long parched desert of my mind. At the same time, my household ledger and record of abnormal incidents continued to grow. I even started trying to assign a monetary value to my invisible labor. Based on local market rates, I calculated what it would have cost to outsource my roles as a full-time housewife, live-in maid, and elderly caregiver for the past 5 years. The number I came up with stunned me. It was enough for a down payment on a small condo in our city with money to spare. The irony of it. I was creating value, yet I was deemed to have no income, no contribution. One weekend, my mother-in-law's sister and her family came over. My aunt was a loud woman, Wow, Susan, your place is so clean. Emily is so capable, she boomed upon entering. My mother-in-law on the sofa barely cracked a smile. This is all she's good for. It's our Jake who supports this entire family. My aunt looked me over her tone, a mix of pity and superiority. It's not easy for Emily stuck by the stove all day. But that's a woman's lot. Marrying well is a blessing. Your duty is to serve your husband and take care of the home. Right, Emily. My hand in the middle of pouring tea paused. I looked up and smiled at her. You're right, Aunt Carol. The smile was flawless, but my heart was a frozen wasteland. My duty was to objectify myself into an accessory of this family, to work tirelessly, and to be grateful for the scraps I was given. During the meal, the conversation turned to my aunt's daughter who had just gotten into a good law school. A professional career is so important for a girl. It gives her independence, and it makes her a better catch, my aunt bragged, then glanced at me. Emily, if you had stuck with your career, you wouldn't be in this position now. But you're lucky too. Jake makes good money. Jake seemed to enjoy the compliments, smiling without saying a word. He put a piece of food on my plate. Emily is a great cook. Aunt Carol, have some more. I looked at the piece of roasted chicken he had given me. It was perfectly cooked, a dish that had taken me hours to prepare. I used to think of this as a sign of his affection. Now it just felt like a handout, a reminder. See, this is your greatest use. Thank you, I said softly, and ate the chicken slowly. It tasted fine, but I couldn't discern any flavor. After the meal, I took the dishes to the kitchen. The sound of running water drowned out the laughter from the other room. I stood by the window looking at my blurred reflection. That voice in my head spoke again, clearer than ever. Emily, how much longer are you going to endure this? A few days later, an opportunity arose. Jake announced he was going on a 3-day business trip to Chicago for an industry conference. His eyes shifted as he spoke, but I didn't question him. I just nodded and helped him pack. Be careful. Remember to eat on time. My tone was even tinged with the appropriate amount of concern. The afternoon after he left, my mother-in-law complained of a headache and went to her room to sleep, telling me not to disturb her. My father-in-law was out playing golf. I was home alone. The house was silent. I knew it was time. I cleaned for a while, then went into the home office and locked the door. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. I put on a pair of thin rubber gloves I had prepared. The desk drawer lock was a simple one. I recalled some tips from the online lectures, and using a thin hairpin, I carefully probed the lock. It wasn't like in the movies. The process was clumsy and slow. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Just as I was about to give up, I heard a soft click. It was open. I took a deep breath and gently pulled the drawer open. There was no cash or top-secret documents, mostly company technical files, copies of project contracts, and photocopies of important documents like our property deed, car registration, and insurance policies. I quickly and carefully photographed everything with my old phone. At the very bottom of the drawer, in a plain manila folder, I found what I was looking for: several bank statements and an investment agreement. One statement was for Jake's salary card, the one he used for household expenses. It showed his salary coming in each month. But another statement for a bank card I had never seen before showed large regular transfers out over the past year to a third-party wealth management platform. The investment agreement was between Jake and an investment firm. The amount was significant. The beneficiary was Jake, but the contact address was for an unfamiliar apartment complex, not our home. Holding my breath, I photographed every page, my hands steady. Then, in a pile of old business cards, I saw a well-designed personal card: Ashley Vance, Project Director, XX Media Company. On the back, a private phone number was written in elegant script, along with a smiley face. Ashley Vance. The name hit me like lightning. It matched Ashley. Marketing. I photographed the card. In the corner, I found a hardcover moleskin notebook. It wasn't for work. Inside were sporadic entries, dates, initials, and numbers, like some kind of private ledger or diary. 3/15 met A at the Ritz. Gift bracelet. 4 halves, investment profit came in. Happy promotion to A. Transfer $5,200. 5. Over 20 holiday transfer $2,000. 7/10 transferred $50K from parents' medical emergency fund. E. Doesn't know. The numbers, the entries, they were like poisoned icicles, stabbing my eyes, lodging in my brain. He had never given me a holiday gift worth more than a few $100s, yet he could so easily lavish another woman with thousands. parents' medical emergency fund. He had been secretly moving assets, and the note E doesn't know was written so casually, so damning. I was trembling, a chill running through me, but I didn't stop taking pictures. Every page, every word clearly recorded. I closed the notebook, put everything back exactly as I found it, locked the drawer, took off the gloves, and wiped away any possible fingerprints. By the time I was done, I was nearly drained, my back soaked in cold sweat. I slid down the side of the desk and sat on the floor, gasping for air. Rage, humiliation, grief, disgust, emotions warred inside me, but they were all eventually suppressed by a stronger, colder resolve. Evidence. This is all evidence. Transfer of assets. Adultery. Long-term deceit. I sat on the cold floor for a long time until my heartbeat steadied. Then I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow into the study, bathing everything in a warm light that couldn't reach my heart. I took out my phone and clicked on the link to the lawyer Sarah had recommended. In the video, the lawyer, a woman named Miss Davis, was speaking, her voice clear and powerful. In a marriage, especially for a homemaker, you must be evidence-conscious. Records of your domestic labor, proof of joint assets, evidence of the other party's misconduct. This isn't about being calculating. It's about protecting your rights. The law protects everyone's legal property and recognizes the value of domestic labor. When you decide to stand up, remember, you are not starting from zero. You possess the intangible assets of your years of contribution. Our job is to make those assets seen and acknowledged. I listened to that part over and over, engraving every word into my memory. That night, I organized all the new evidence along with the previous recordings and photos, encrypting and backing them up on multiple cloud drives and an external hard drive. Then I began to draft a document, not an agreement, but a detailed statement, a timeline of my life from our marriage to the signing of the agreement through the past 5 years, detailing my contributions and Jake's changing behavior. I wasn't ready to confront him yet. I knew the time wasn't right. I didn't have enough leverage. My preparations weren't complete. But I could see the faint outline of the path I had to take. A path full of thorns. The day Jake returned from his trip, the weather was beautiful. He brought me a scarf, a souvenir from the conference, he said. It was plain and the fabric was coarse. His eyes flickered as he handed it to me, but I smiled and accepted it, even trying it on. It's nice. Thank you, I said. He seemed relieved and turned to pet their cat. I felt the cheap scarf around my neck and watched his back. The sunlight streamed through the window, outlining his familiar figure. Once that figure was my entire source of support and warmth. Now it just felt incredibly distant and cold. The air was thick with the smoke of a coming battle, but he was still lost in his self-assured tranquility, completely oblivious. And in this war, I would no longer be silent. I attended every one of Lawyer Davis's online seminars. Her rational, clear voice was like a scalpel cutting through the warm facade of marriage to reveal the cold skeleton of property rights and obligations within. I began to understand that I was facing not just an unfaithful husband, but a complex battle involving economics, law, and emotion. My household ledger evolved from simple notes into a spreadsheet with timestamps, category tags, and estimated market values. I started collecting original physical evidence, shopping receipts, utility bills, the pitifully few transfer records for household expenses from Jake, even copies of his mother's hospital registration slips from when I cared for her. Anything that could prove I had fulfilled my duties and shouldered my family responsibilities, I scanned and filed away. I also continued to gather evidence of his misconduct. I used the recording device a few more times when Jake was making late-night calls on the balcony, or when his mother was making snide remarks at me. The snippets of his impatient rebukes, his entitled demands, and the occasional slip of Ashley's name all became audio files in my encrypted folder. I knew this wasn't enough. I needed more direct evidence. The moleskin notebook was key, but a photo could be denied. I needed the original, or something that could form an unbreakable chain with other evidence. The opportunity came faster and more humiliatingly than I expected. One Saturday afternoon, Jake rushed out claiming a work emergency. His mother was at her yoga class. His father was at the golf course. I was home alone again. I was hanging laundry on the balcony when a phone rang in the living room. It was Jake's. He had forgotten it. I walked over. The screen was lit up with an incoming call from Director Vance. No longer Ashley. Marketing, she was moving up quickly. I didn't answer. It rang for a long time and went to voicemail. But then a series of text message previews popped up one after another. Even without opening them, I could see the first few lines. Hey, why aren't you answering? That watch you liked, I asked. A friend, there's a discount. The usual spot tonight. I learned a new dish. I'll make it for you. A shared location pin. The screen went dark, then lit up again, then went dark. The words were like barbed hooks dragging back and forth across my heart, leaving it raw and bleeding. I stood there still, holding a wet piece of clothing, water dripping onto the clean floor. A breeze came in from the balcony. It was late summer, but a chill ran through me, so cold it hurt my bones. I don't know how long I stood there. I bent down, picked up the dripping clothes, and rehung them on the line, my movements mechanical and steady. Then I took a rag and wiped the water off the floor back and forth until it shone. I didn't touch his phone. I didn't call back. I didn't read any more messages. I did nothing, just placed the phone back where it was as if it had never rung. But I knew from the moment I saw those words, something had died completely along with the last remnants of self-deception and pathetic affection. Jake came home very late, smelling of alcohol but with clear eyes. After his shower, I was at my vanity applying skincare. I watched him in the mirror. Someone named Vance called for you today. Seemed urgent, I said, my tone as flat as if I were discussing the price of vegetables. His hand toweling his hair paused for a beat before resuming. Oh, a client. It's fine, I'll call back tomorrow. I continued patting my face, watching in the mirror as he subconsciously glanced at the phone on the nightstand. Oh, right, he said, as if remembering something. He walked up behind me and placed his hands on my shoulders. Our eyes met in the mirror. His face wore a deliberately gentle expression. My mom's birthday is next month, her 65th. We should celebrate it properly. I was thinking of booking a private room at the Capitol Grill and inviting some friends and family. What do you think, Capitol Grill? A famous upscale steakhouse. Hundreds of dollars per person. Okay, whatever you think is best, I said. You handle the arrangements, the guest list, the menu you decide. Let me know if you need money. He patted my shoulder, a casual gesture of assigning a task. Okay, I agreed. He seemed satisfied with my obedience, and went to lie down soon, falling into a snoring sleep. I stared at the mirror, slowly rubbing in the last of my lotion. The woman in the reflection was 34 with fine lines at the corners of her eyes, but her gaze was as calm and still as a midnight lake. His mother's 65th birthday. What a perfect opportunity. A grand public banquet that required all my effort to organize. A chance to display the harmony and prestige of the Miller family in front of friends and relatives, to showcase my virtue and diligence. And he would probably be there wearing an expensive watch gifted by Director Vance, charming the guests. I felt no anger, only a cold emptiness and a cruel clarity. I began preparing for the party, contacting the restaurant, drafting the guest list, selecting the menu, planning the event. It was tedious, but I was more meticulous and dedicated than ever before. My mother-in-law was very pleased, even offering me a few rare smiles in front of relatives, praising me for finally putting my heart into it. Jake was pleased too, probably thinking I was still under his thumb, the dutiful wife who came when called. He would occasionally ask a few questions, then wave a hand and say, "You handle it," before going back to being busy and coming home later and later. Only I knew what I was doing in the quiet moments between party preparations late at night. I registered a new completely anonymous email address. With it, I sent a long anonymous letter to Lawyer Davis's firm, detailing my situation, the Homemaker agreement, 5 years without income, my husband's suspected infidelity and transfer of assets, the pressure from my in-laws. I didn't reveal any personal information, just asked how to begin collecting valid evidence and what my chances were if it went to court. I didn't get an immediate reply, which I expected. A week before the party, I went to the Capitol Grill under the pretext of finalizing the menu. At the front desk, I feigned a casual question. "Excuse me, has a Miss Ashley Vance ever booked a reservation here? Or does a Mr. Jake Miller often dine here with a Miss Vance?" The hostess was well-trained, polite, but wary. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we cannot disclose our client's private information." I didn't press. I smiled, thanked her, and left. As I turned, I noted the angle of a security camera near the front desk out of the corner of my eye. I knew it was a long shot, but what I wanted wasn't necessarily a direct answer from the restaurant. I was laying a trail no matter how faint. The day of the party was a grand affair. My mother-in-law in a custom-made dress, I helped her order, beamed as she accepted compliments. Jake in a sharp suit mingled and toasted the picture of success. I, in a tasteful but simple dress, bustled about greeting guests and managing details, playing the part of the perfect hostess. Halfway through the dinner, Jake got up to go to the restroom, leaving his phone on the head table. The relatives at the table were busy drinking and talking loudly. No one was paying attention. I picked up a water pitcher and pretended to refill a child's glass next to me. As I leaned forward, my arm accidentally brushed against Jake's wine glass. The dark red wine spilled, splashing onto his phone case. "Oh," I gasped immediately, grabbing a napkin. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't paying attention." With feigned panic, I picked up his phone to wipe it. My fingers unintentionally woke the screen. The wallpaper was a landscape photo. No passcode, just swipe to unlock. He usually disabled it for convenience at events like this. The home screen appeared. The text message icon had a glaring red 3 inches the corner. The latest message preview was from Ashley. "Happy birthday. Do you like the gift? Video call tonight sent 5 minutes ago." Today was not Jake's birthday. My heart seized, but my hands kept moving. I quickly wiped the phone dry and put it back, then started cleaning the table. The whole thing took less than 20 seconds. No one noticed, except for the kid next to me, who was focused on his cake. It's fine, just a little wine," a relative said. Jake returned, frowned slightly at the damp spot on the table, but said nothing. He picked up his phone, his finger swiped quickly, and the corner of his mouth seemed to twitch into a faint smile. Then he locked the screen and put the phone in his pocket. The party continued with laughter and toasts. I stood behind my mother-in-law serving her food, listening to her brag about how successful her son was and how obedient her daughter-in-law was. I maintained a perfect smile, but my heart was frozen solid. That text message was the final key, unlocking the last bolted door in my heart. Behind it was not sadness, not anger, but an unprecedented cold clarity. The party was a success. My mother-in-law was thrilled. Jake felt he had gained a lot of face, and the relatives were full of praise. When the party was over and we returned to our magnificent but cold home, I removed my makeup and changed into my pajamas. Jake had drunk a bit too much and passed out on the bed. I sat at my vanity looking at my pale face in the mirror. Then I opened my anonymous email account. There was one unread message. It was from Lawyer Davis's firm. An auto-reply stating they had received my inquiry but needed more information, suggesting I make an appointment for an in-person consultation and providing instructions. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I closed it and opened my encrypted document. I typed in today's date and wrote mother-in-law's birthday party, Capitol Grill. Jay's phone received happy birthday text from A. Not his birthday. Suspected private celebration. Can be used as corroborating evidence with previous A-related records and receipts. I hit enter. The cursor blinked at the end of the document like a single cold eye. The noise of the party still seemed to echo in my ears, but my heart had settled, completely sinking to a dark but solid place. The cracks had long been there. Now they had just reached the surface, and I would be the one to tear it all open. The party was like a grand firework display. After the noise, all that remained was debris and the cold smell of smoke. I became quieter and busier. By day, I was the diligent housewife. By night, under the glow of my desk lamp and computer screen, I built my defenses. I had compiled a thick binder of notes from Lawyer Davis's seminars. I started to organize my own case using her logic. I wasn't a lawyer, but I was the one who knew every detail of the last 5 years. Like the harshest editor, I reviewed and revised my domestic labor spreadsheet and my log of suspicious incidents, ensuring every entry was verifiable, timelined, and logically connected. I also began to organize the house in a new way. I discovered more interesting things. A receipt for a high-end necklace hidden in an old book in the study purchased on my birthday, but I had never seen the gift. A tiny cropped photo in Jake's old wallet, him with his arm around a woman with reddish-brown hair taken from behind, with the ocean in the background, and a date stamp from last summer when he was supposedly at a work retreat. And even in my mother-in-law's sewing box, a copy of another draft agreement. Not my homemaker agreement, but a draft for a property agreement in Jake's handwriting. It stipulated that the husband's income and its appreciation after marriage would be his personal property. The signature line was blank, but the draft date was 3 months before our wedding, so the calculation had been there from the very beginning. I carefully photographed the picture and the draft with my old phone. The receipt I took a detailed picture of in the sunlight. Each item was a piece of the puzzle. Meanwhile, I started talking to Sarah more often. I began asking more specific questions about industry trends, career planning, and even discreetly about the most feasible paths for someone who had been out of the workforce for years to re-enter. Sarah was sharp, but she never pried. She just gave me the most practical advice she could, and even sent me links to free online skills training courses. Emily, no matter what you decide to do, it never hurts to learn more. You still have a good foundation. It won't be hard to pick it back up, she said, during one of our calls, her voice warm and steady. A good foundation. I touched my hands, calloused from years of washing and scrubbing, and looked at the tired, careworn face in the mirror. I wasn't confident, but I knew I had to try. Not to find a job immediately, but to reclaim the possibility of having one, to reclaim the social identity that the agreement and 5 years of my life had almost erased. Life passed in a strange state of calm on the surface, and turbulent currents underneath. Jake seemed to notice something different about me, but he chalked it up to a bad mood or hormonal changes. He would occasionally offer a cheap gesture of concern, like bringing home a small dessert from a bakery that I didn't even like, or saying you've worked hard when I was running around ragged. I accepted it all with a smile and a thank you, then turned and continued my work. The real break happened on an ordinary weekend morning, triggered unexpectedly by a burnt piece of toast. I was making breakfast when I got distracted by his mother asking for help with her iPad. The toast in the toaster started to smoke. I rushed over, but it was too late. The kitchen filled with the acrid smell. Jake came downstairs, wrinkling his nose. "What is that smell, Emily? Can't you even make toast without burning it? I have a big presentation today, and now my suit is going to stink." My mother-in-law chimed in from the living room. "Honestly, Emily, it's one thing after another. You're just not careful. You don't appreciate how hard Jake works to provide all this for you." In the past, I might have apologized profusely. But that day, maybe because I was sleep-deprived from organizing documents, or maybe because the string inside me had been stretched too taut for too long, I looked up and said calmly, "It was an accident, and I was helping your mother. The house will air out." My tone wasn't aggressive, just factual. But perhaps because it had been so long since I had spoken to them without deference, Jake was stunned. His face flushed red. "An accident. The only accident is that I have to deal with this incompetence every single day. Look at you. What do you even do all day besides mess things up? What have you contributed to this family? Anything. Contribution." He finally said it. Not in a drunken stupor, but as a righteous accusation. I looked at his face twisted with anger, and at his mother's "I told you so" expression. The last bit of warmth in my heart vanished. I suddenly laughed. It must have been an ugly sight. Contribution, Jake? Without the contribution of this incompetent woman day in and day out for 5 years? Could you go to work in a perfectly pressed suit every day? Could you work late and attend client dinners until midnight, with no worries? Could your parents live so comfortably in their old age? Could this house be spotless with 3 meals on the table? I may not have brought a single cent into this family's bank account. But what about you? Have you ever paid me a salary? At market rate, how much is my 5 years of service worth? Have you ever calculated that? You ungrateful." His mother started. "I am ungrateful." I heard my own voice tremble, but the words poured out like a flood. "What should I be grateful for? For you treating me like free labor? For your son having an affair while finding me an eyesore? For your whole family scheming together, planning to kick me out with nothing once I'm old and worn out? Slap a sharp ringing slap landed hard across my face. A searing pain spread instantly, my ears buzzing. I stood there, my head turned to the side, stunned for a few seconds. It was Jake. His face was pale with rage, his chest heaving. The hand that had struck me was still in the air. "Emily, you say one more damn word. I support you so you can spew this filth and slander me. What affair? What scheming? I think your easy life has driven you insane." His mother rushed forward, her finger nearly poking my nose. "She's out of control. How dare she make such accusations? Jake, look at the good wife you married. Get her out of here. Our family doesn't want this troublemaker." The side of my face was numb with pain, but my heart was a frozen, calm landscape. That slap had shattered my last illusion. I slowly turned my head back, licked my split lip, and tasted a hint of blood. I looked at Jake, at the man I had shared a bed with for years, at the raw fury and flicker of panic in his eyes. And then I smiled. A smile that brought tears to my eyes. "Fine," I nodded, my voice eerily calm. "Jake, I will remember this slap. And Susan, don't be in such a hurry to kick me out." I turned and walked back to the bedroom, closing and locking the door behind me. The movements were unhurried, almost graceful. Outside, the cacophony of his mother's crying, Jake's yelling, and his father's belated attempts at mediation blended into a noisy backdrop from another world. I walked to the mirror and looked at the woman with a swollen red cheek, disheveled hair, and a bleeding lip. Her eyes were empty, yet they burned with 2 cold flames. I gently touched my burning cheek. It hurt. It hurt so much. But the pain was good. The pain was clarifying. I went to my desk, opened the hidden drawer, and took out my old phone. I opened the video recorder, switched to the front camera, and aimed it at my swollen face and bleeding lip. Today is the 28th of October, 2026, at 9:17 a.m. My voice calm and steady filled the quiet room. Following a verbal altercation, my husband Jake Miller struck me across the face. His mother Susan Miller was present and verbally abused me, inciting her son's violent behavior. This is a record of the event. The recording lasted 30 seconds. I clearly showed the injuries on my face, then stopped. Outside, the sun was bright. It was a beautiful day. I wiped the blood from my lip and slowly fixed my hair and clothes in the mirror. The first direct confrontation had ended with a resounding slap and a complete rupture. But I knew this was just the beginning. The war had finally moved from the shadows into the open, and I had nothing left to lose. That slap shattered all semblance of peace. I no longer hid my changes. I stopped catering to my mother-in-law's unreasonable demands, stopped leaving a light on for Jake when he came home late, and stopped playing the part of the docile, silent shadow. I still cooked, but only for my in-laws and myself. If Jake wanted to eat, he could make it himself or order takeout. I still cleaned, but only the common areas and my own room. His study and their master bedroom were off limits. The house became a cold battlefield filled with silent smoke. My mother-in-law called me an ungrateful monster. Jake responded with the silent treatment and even more frequent overtime and business trips. My father-in-law completely detached himself, leaving early and coming home late. I didn't care. All my energy was focused on a more important battle. The swelling on my face took 3 days to fade. I encrypted and saved the 3-0-second video, backing it up multiple times, along with all my other evidence. Then one afternoon, when Jake was on a trip and his mother was at her dance class, I changed into my most inconspicuous clothes, put on a hat and mask, and went to Lawyer Davis's office. At the reception, I gave the name of my anonymous email account. While waiting, I sat straight-backed on the sofa, my palms sweating slightly. It wasn't fear, but the tension of facing an unknown destiny. Lawyer Davis was even more impressive in person, around 40 with sharp, steady eyes. She led me into a quiet consultation room. "Miss Hayes," she said, confirming it was me. I took off my mask. She didn't react to my plain clothes or tired face, just offered me a seat and a glass of warm water. "You described the general situation in your email. We can talk in detail now. Take your time." I took out a folder containing a summary of my case minus the most sensitive evidence and began my story. From the beginning, meeting Jake, the Homemaker agreement, the 5 years of my life, the discovery of his infidelity and financial deceit, the fight, the slap. I presented the facts as objectively as possible without emotion, using a timeline and key points. Lawyer Davis listened intently, occasionally taking notes or asking for details, the exact circumstances of signing the agreement, the composition of our household expenses, the specific evidence I had found, and how. I omitted some of the methods I used to obtain it. The entire narrative took nearly 2 hours. When I finished, I was exhausted but also relieved. Finally, someone knew everything, not as gossip but as a serious case. Lawyer Davis closed her notebook. "Miss Hayes, first I need to tell you that the clause in your agreement stating you would have no right to divide marital property is highly likely to be deemed invalid. It deprives you of your statutory rights and violates principles of equality. It cannot be used as a basis for you to leave with nothing." I nodded. I had suspected as much from my own research. "Second," she continued, regarding your husband's accusation that you contributed nothing under state law if one spouse bears more duties in raising children, caring for the elderly, or assisting the other's work, they are entitled to compensation upon divorce. Your 5 years of handling all housework and caring for his parents are legally recognized as valuable domestic labor. Your detailed records and market value estimates will be very strong evidence. Finally, regarding his suspected infidelity and transfer of assets, her expression grew serious. The evidence. You have the recordings, photos, bank statements, notebook already forms a preliminary chain of evidence. If we can supplement this with more direct proof, like intimate photos or concrete evidence of asset transfers, it will be extremely helpful in establishing his fault and securing a more favorable division of property for you. She paused. But I must warn you, the legality of how evidence is obtained is important. Also, divorce proceedings, especially contentious ones like this, can be long and draining. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Have you considered a negotiated settlement? I looked her in the eye and shook my head firmly. Miss Davis, a settlement requires good faith. In my husband's eyes, I deserve to leave with nothing. That slap ended any possibility of reconciliation. I am not only determined to see this through, but I also want to get back everything I'm owed, not just the money, but the dignity and value of my labor that have been trampled on for 5 years. She was silent for a moment, then nodded. I understand. In that case, we need to prepare thoroughly. We need to systematically organize and strengthen the evidence, especially concerning the asset transfers and his misconduct. Also, what is your personal financial situation? I gave her a pitifully small number, the sum of what I had managed to save from the $2,500 monthly allowance and my old savings. Lawyer Davis frowned but didn't comment. She gave me a checklist of evidence to focus on. Go home and without alerting him, try to gather what's on this list. Pay close attention to his bank accounts, investments, and property records. If possible, try to get direct evidence of him admitting to the affair, or transferring assets like a recording or a written statement. But be careful. Protect your safety. As I was leaving, she added, "This won't be easy. You will face a lot of pressure, but you are not alone in this situation. The law is on the side of reason and fairness. Everything you've given to your family should not be erased. Hold on." "Thank you, Miss Davis," I said sincerely. Walking out of the law firm, the city lights were just coming on. My heart was still heavy, but now it was the weight of purpose, not despair. The real war was just beginning. I became a spider, silently weaving my web. The chance came a month later. Jake came home blackout drunk from his company's holiday party. His mother and father helped him to the bedroom while I silently went to make hangover soup. After everyone was asleep, I went into the bedroom. He was dead to the world, his phone half slipped out of his pocket. I took off his shoes, covered him with a blanket, and then casually picked up his phone. It was locked, but his fingerprint would still work. I gently pressed his thumb to the home button. Click. It unlocked. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. I quickly went through his texts. The chats with Ashley were more explicit than ever. I used my old phone to record the screen. Then I opened his banking apps again with his fingerprint and screenshotted a year's worth of transactions, focusing on large transfers to unknown accounts and investment platforms. I cleared the history, locked the phone, and placed it back by his pillow. The whole process took less than 5 minutes. I stood there looking at the drunken man on the bed. This was the man who had consumed the best 5 years of my life, only to try and discard me like a dirty rag. I felt nothing but a cold confirmation. More evidence. As the new year passed, the atmosphere at home dropped below freezing. My mother-in-law was constantly on the phone with relatives complaining about me. Jake became more guarded, locking his home office and never letting his phone out of his sight. But it was too late. I compiled a thick dossier of evidence with Lawyer Davis's guidance. 1. A 5-year report quantifying my domestic labor with market value estimates. R. The original Homemaker agreement and a legal analysis. 3. Recordings of Jake accusing me of having no contribution. 4. A series of evidence of his affair with Ashley Vance, screen recordings of texts, receipts, photos. 5. Preliminary evidence of his transfer and concealment of marital assets, bank statements, investment agreements, the notebook. 6. The video of the slap and a subsequent hospital report for my injury. 7. Recordings of my in-laws' long-term verbal abuse. Lawyer Davis reviewed the materials and said the core evidence was solid. It was time. Shortly after the new year, I officially filed for divorce. I requested the dissolution of the marriage, a fair division of assets, house-car savings investments, a judgment that he had hidden assets, and should receive a smaller share economic compensation for my 5 years of domestic labor, and damages for emotional distress due to his infidelity and domestic violence. I also filed for an injunction to freeze his main bank and investment accounts to prevent further transfers. The day the court summons was served, I was at the supermarket. Jake called over and over. I didn't answer. Then his mother called. I didn't answer. Finally, a long, furious text message came from him, a mix of disbelief, threats, and accusations. He called me insane, greedy, and evil, warning me to drop the lawsuit or he would make me regret it. I calmly read it, then blocked his number, his mother's, and every other relative who might call on his behalf. The world was finally quiet. At the pre-trial hearing, I saw Jake and his lawyer. He looked pale and furious, his eyes full of venom. His lawyer attacked the legality of my evidence and dismissed my domestic labor valuation as fantasy. He claimed the Homemaker agreement was a sign of our loving marriage and denied all accusations, counterclaiming that I was the one who had destroyed the marriage with my paranoid and difficult personality. Lawyer Davis calmly refuted every point, presenting the evidence systematically. The bank statements, the notebook photos, the recordings, it was enough to make the judge's expression turn grim. Jake's lawyer tried to provoke me, but I remained silent and composed just as Lawyer Davis had advised. I could see the anger in Jake's eyes slowly giving way to a dawning panic. He never imagined that the wife who couldn't do anything but housework could be so prepared, so calm, sitting across from him as she systematically tore down his lies. The trial date was set for mid-March. The night before I laid out my clothes, a simple dark suit I had bought with my meager savings. I lay in bed, sleepless, the moonlight streaming in. 5 years felt like a long, absurd dream. Tomorrow it was time to wake up. Whatever the outcome, I knew that starting tomorrow I would no longer be the Emily trapped in the kitchen. I was walking into a courtroom toward a new unknown, but finally a future of my own choosing. The courtroom was solemn, paneled in dark wood. On the other side, Jake sat stiffly in his suit, his jaw tight. My friends Chloe and Sarah gave me supportive nods from the gallery. Jake's relatives glared at me. "Relax," Lawyer Davis whispered. "The facts are on your side." I took a deep breath. 5 years of silent suffering and months of nerve-wracking preparation had all led to this moment. The trial began. Jake's lawyer went first, painting him as a hard-working provider burdened by a paranoid, ungrateful wife. He argued I had contributed nothing financially and should leave with nothing as per our voluntary agreement. Then it was Lawyer Davis's turn. She stood calm and methodical. First, she argued that the key clause in the agreement was illegal and void. Then she presented my thick binder, the Domestic Labor Quantification Report. "Your Honor," she said. Her voice clear. "This report details over 1,000 hours of unpaid labor my client, Miss Hayes, performed for this family over the past 5 years. Its economic value based on market rates is substantial. According to state law, she is entitled to compensation. She was not a non-contributor. She was the family's primary contributor of non-monetary value." She then presented the second set of evidence: the recordings, photos, bank statements, the notebook, the happy birthday text. These items form an undeniable chain of evidence, proving that the defendant, Mr. Miller, engaged in a long-term extramarital affair, transferred and concealed marital assets, and perpetrated domestic violence. His actions are the sole cause of this marriage's breakdown. During the cross-examination, Jake's lawyer frantically attacked the evidence's legitimacy, suggesting illegal snooping. He claimed the affair was just a normal friendship, and the money transfers were standard investments. Lawyer Davis was prepared. She cited legal precedents and demonstrated how all the evidence, when viewed together, pointed to only one conclusion. The prenuptial draft she presented as a final blow was the nail in the coffin. It proved his premeditated intent to leave me with nothing from the very beginning. Jake's face went completely white. He had clearly forgotten about it, and his lawyer had never been told. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted decisively. When it was my turn for a final statement, I stood up. The courtroom fell silent. All eyes were on me. I looked directly at the judge. My voice was quiet but steady. "Your Honor, I am Emily Hayes. I am here today not just to fight for money, but to seek justice for my last 5 years." I glanced at Jake. 5 years ago, my husband asked me to sign that agreement for the good of our family. I believed him. I signed it. I gave up my career to wash his clothes and cook his meals, thinking I would earn respect and gratitude. But what did I get? My voice rose slightly. I got endless chores, constant criticism, from my in-laws and my husband's growing indifference. He wore the shirts I ironed, ate the meals I cooked, and lived in the house I kept spotless, all while lavishing another woman with expensive gifts. And then he had the audacity to turn around and accuse me of contributing nothing to this family. I took a breath, my voice ringing with clarity. I may not have deposited a salary into our bank account, but is a clean home, hot meals, and healthy parents, not a contribution. Are 5 years of my youth, my hard work, and my social isolation worthless? That agreement turned me into this. Family's free servant. And now that you're done with me, you want to discard me with the label of no contribution and kick me out with nothing. I looked back at the judge, my voice firm. I am not denying my responsibilities as a wife, but I cannot accept my labor being erased, my dignity being trampled, and my husband betraying our marriage while I upheld my end of the bargain. I ask the court to divide our property fairly, to grant me the compensation I have earned for my domestic labor, and to hold the defendant accountable for the damages his infidelity and abuse have caused. This is not just for me. It is a matter of basic justice for all women who sacrifice and contribute silently within their homes. I sat down, my heart pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. I had said what needed to be said. The courtroom was silent. Jake stared at me, a mixture of rage, shock, and a flicker of something new, fear. After a brief deliberation, the judge began to read the verdict. He affirmed that the key clause in the agreement was void. He affirmed the immense value of my domestic labor. This court finds, the judge's voice boomed, that the plaintiff Emily Hayes, despite not earning a direct income, made significant contributions to the family through her extensive domestic labor, the value of which must be recognized. The defendant's claim of no contribution is without legal basis. Conversely, the evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that the defendant, Mr. Jake Miller, engaged in an extramarital affair and concealed marital assets, actions that constitute a serious breach of marital duty and are the primary cause for this divorce. The defendant is the party at fault. The final judgment was read. 1. The divorce was granted. 2. Our shared home was awarded to me. The remaining mortgage would be my responsibility. 3. The remaining marital assets, savings, investments, etc. would be divided 60, 40 inches, my favor. 4. Jake was ordered to pay me a significant lump sum as economic compensation for 5 years of domestic labor. 5. Jake was ordered to pay an additional sum for emotional distress damages. 6. Jake was ordered to bear the majority of the court costs. I had won, more completely than I had ever dared to hope. Jake slumped in his chair, his face ashen, his previous arrogance gone. His lawyer packed his briefcase, avoiding his client's gaze. In the gallery, my friends were crying with joy. Plaintiff Miss Hayes, the judge said, do you accept this verdict? I stood slowly. I looked at the judge and said, clearly, I accept the verdict. Thank you, Your Honor, for a just ruling. Then I turned my head and looked directly at the man who was, until a moment ago, my husband. He looked up and our eyes met. His were filled with the rage of a loser and the pain of financial loss. I looked at him for 3 long seconds. Then, in a voice just loud enough for everyone to hear, I said slowly and deliberately, Jake, remember this. It's not that I didn't contribute to this family. It's that your entire family was never worthy of my contribution. Without waiting for a reaction, I turned, nodded to Lawyer Davis and my friends, and walked out of the courtroom, my back straight. The bright sunlight that streamed through the courthouse doors was blinding, but I didn't squint. The spring wind was still cool, but it carried the scent of new life. Behind me was the tomb of a 5-year marriage and the end of a long, silent war. Ahead of me, though uncertain, was my own life, free at last. I did not look back.